Hello guys, it is I, the second antagonist on what is probably my fourth attempt to do a review on this. Hopefully this one works out. Anyway, I just wanted to do a review on the new Saints Row Reboot reveal trailer that's just come out in 2021. I just wanted to voice, I guess, my concerns about the trailer and discuss why it has received such negative criticisms. And go into my personal opinion as to why I personally feel disappointed by the trailer and why I feel like the company has, I guess, taken Saints Row into a direction that doesn't really stay true to its core and what it originally was in 1 and 2. And that being, I think, the main reason why a lot of people don't like this new trailer. Anyway, I don't want to bash the company or anything like that. I just want to, give my personal opinion as to why I, disliked the trailer and why I felt disappointed. Anyway, I think there's probably, I could maybe narrow it down to three reasons. Primarily two as to why I feel like people don't like this new reboot trailer. One, firstly, is the culture, the Saints Row culture, and second is the characters, how they carry themselves. What our first impressions are when we see these characters. And I guess also a little bit of woke ideology as well as probably the third point. But I'm going to mainly go over the first 2 points because the characters are a big reason why. I think that people aren't happy with this series. There are some good points about the trailer that I'll go over as well. There's probably maybe only one that I liked about this trailer. But I'm going to first just go over, some of the negative parts and why I felt this... why I was personally disappointed by this trailer. Anyway, the first reason is, of course, the culture. And what I mean by culture is the colors, the Saints Row colors, right? So when you first look at these kind of gang members, there's kind of a ridiculous look on this guy's face. They're kind of ridiculous. Anyway, so the colors. So you don't see a lot of the purple kind of culture with the Saints here. So we see these two characters here. There's a woman in the front, and there's this guy here with the spectacles and his little bow tie. There's a little bit of purple there. I'm seeing it on his bow tie and the shades. So there's a little bit there, but not really. It's like the remnants are there. As opposed to if you look at Saints Row 1 and 2. Right, so this is a Saints Row wallpaper. So this is, I think, maybe from 1 or 2, Saints Row 1 or 2. This is from Saints Row 1. You see that the purple colors, even in the tints of the buildings and, everywhere, you see it a lot. There's a little bit of characters in the background that, they're wearing a little bit more dark clothing, but you can still see the purple, right? The purple is definitely very symbolic. It's a big part of the Saints culture, right? It also looks a little bit silly, that kind of... costume, but it's purple, right? And you see these kind of gang members here. It's everywhere, right? It's definitely a big part of what the Saints are. But in the new trailer, you don't see that. You don't see the purple colors much. You see a little bit, maybe on his little bow tie and things like that, but you really don't see a lot of it. It's really not there. You see maybe a little bit here with this smiley face right here, but there's not a lot of that culture breezing through in terms of clothes that they're wearing. So that brings me on to the second point, is how the characters themselves, how they carry themselves, and I guess how we would perceive them being kind of the old school fans from the original Saints Row games. So first impression of these characters is that they, first of all, you have to ask yourself, let me just go a little bit forward to get a better shot of these characters here. Let's see. Okay, first of all, would you be intimidated by these characters? Right, now you have to keep in mind that Saints, they're a gang, right? So it's very important that they would have some form of intimidation behind the characters, right? So when the characters don't have this form of intimidation, it kind of ruins the immersion a little bit because they don't feel like a gang. So ask yourself, this guy, would you be intimidated by this guy, or would you be intimidated by these guys, right? Okay, just rule out the fact that these guys are holding weapons, just these guys in general. You make that comparison. These new characters, they almost, especially like with his little bow tie, it almost looks like this guy. I think this guy's probably one of the worst in terms of the team because he's the least intimidating. He's the guy at the back with the little bow tie. He almost looks like this kind of, maybe this little dork, and that his mother's kind of dressed him up for prom, and that he's got a little date, kind of ready for him. And these big kind of spectacles that he's wearing almost makes him look like a bit of a hipster, right? They almost look like they're a hipster team. It's as if the developers have focused more on appeasing, I think, the younger audience, the more kind of kids. It's a mature game. There's violence, but it feels like they appeased more to kids. And that they're like almost as if these characters like TikTokers, like hipsters hanging out at a cafe. They don't really feel like a gang, right? So they're not intimidating, and that's I think a really negative factor about these first impressions of these characters is that they don't feel like they're a gang. I think if you look at, if I go back to, and this is one of the more positive points about the trailer. If I go back here, let's see here. Let's get a good shot. So this gang here, you see this gang. This to the right of this kind of nerdy guy here. You see a lot of the yellow colors. That you can definitely tell that this color is symbolic to what this gang is, and you see how a lot of these guys carry themselves as these big guys. You probably wouldn't want to mess with. They definitely look more like a gang. They probably look more like the Saints before the Saints were a reboot, right? The old school Saints, right? So these guys in yellow probably look more like these guys here, right? The original Saints. You see, again, you're seeing a lot of that purple color. It's just not in the new one. You're not seeing that a lot. Yeah. So, and also you see that like in some of these kind of original games, I think they've kind of sexualized the women a little bit more. These the original ones. But it's like this opposite effect in the new one is that they've kind of sexualized this kind of Chad guy instead. If I kind of go forward. Forgive me if you hear people in the background, but you kind of see they've kind of switched it around a bit. So if I go, where is it? Where is it? Oh, so terrible. Where I keep losing my place. I swear I keep losing my place. You'll see him. So I think, yeah. So this guy here, he's got like no. Oh, just show him. So he's got like no shirt on. This guy here, right? So they've kind of switched it around a little bit. No drama with that. But if you kind of go a little bit forward here, I think this kind of brings me to my third point. Is that it's almost like they've got this kind of classic, this kind of stereotype of this strong female character, and that is they take a woman, they shave her head, and they make her very abrasive, very aggressive. Like a lot of players have seen this type of character before in games, and there hasn't been a good appeal about them. A lot of them feel very one-dimensional, right? Like they're pushing this ideology of, oh, we have to make women look really strong in games, so we're gonna make them more masculine. That's always the case. They always, to make them look stronger. It's almost like instead of making them an interesting character and a believable character, they're trying to make them more like men, or they're trying to make them more aggressive, or more masculine. Give them more masculine traits and say, look, a strong female character. And I think that doesn't do justice to a good character. I think that just kind of makes it one-dimensional. And it makes them somewhat boring, right? Like, looking at this woman, let's just look at this whole scene here. So she kind of goes off at him and says, don't touch my friends, and she shoots a missile launcher, right? And then she looks at the camera, and then she tries to look all badass, right? But it's strange because if you see the backstory for these characters, a lot of them are university students and apparently trying to pay off their university debts, and that's the reason why they got into this life of crime. That just feels very unrealistic because, first of all, if you were going into a life of crime to pay off your uni debts, firstly, if you're going to just shoot missiles in the streets, then suddenly that uni debt seems a lot more insignificant, I guess you could say. Right? You're going to be a lot less worried about your uni debts if you're shooting missiles in the streets. So it seems a little bit unrealistic in terms of their goals and why they've chosen this path. And the way that the characters represent themselves, they look like children, but they're kind of like they're all breaking the law. It's as if they're very arrogant. They're very arrogant characters, and as a result of displaying this kind of arrogance and this naivety in terms of the situation that they're in, it creates a disconnect between the characters. They're not really believable, right? And this is why I guess the original Saints were more believable, because they looked more like a gang. Like, look at these guys, right? It's a little bit more believable than, this woman was a very styled kind of shaved head here, right? And the kind of the guy was his little bow tie, which I've lost him now. But anyway, so yeah, they seem to be trying really hard to push these strong female characters, and they really need to stop and just ask themselves, okay, how do we just make interesting characters that change through the plots and that are relatable, rather than just trying to grab women and make them really masculine. It's just it's kind of doesn't do them any justice. You can create a strong character without having to make them more masculine, right? Just want to keep that in mind, because we've seen this a lot. It's one-dimensional in character development and plot development, and we're kind of sick of seeing it. But they don't really care. They dismiss that argument. So yeah, that's definitely one of the issues. That's a kind of a touchy subject, because whenever you bring that up and say, "Oh, I don't think this is the right way to take a character," that kind of opinion is seen as kind of sexist or misogynistic, which is kind of ridiculous, because it means that we can't talk about these things, which I think is pretty unfortunate. So if I disagree with her character or her hairstyle or how she's carrying herself, then I'd be sexist or misogynistic or something like that, which is very ridiculous. It's a bit unfortunate how you can't voice your opinion because of that. And I feel like the whole industry has got stuck in, we got to make female characters stronger, and if you argue with it, you're misogynistic, so you can't, and so therefore these characters are everywhere. So it's disappointing. It is quite disappointing. And the last kind of note I wanted to touch upon here is that the response that the game developers have had in terms of the criticism that they've received for the trailer have been pretty bad. Now, I don't have any of the I'm going to turn the sound off because it's distracting me. I don't have a lot of the quotes and stuff that the company has said, but some of the responses to the fans have been pretty bad. Like I've seen on Twitter that the company have just said, haters are going to hate, right? So people have responded with a criticism, said, look, we don't like this, we don't like where you're taking this, and the devs have responded with haters are going to hate. And, I get that a lot of the negative criticism towards this, some of it seems very immature and, very aggressive and annoying. And as a developer, somebody who kind of develops games myself, I can understand why the developers would feel that that's annoying. But at the same time, it's important that you take it with a form of detachment and patience, in that you take that criticism and then ask yourself as a developer, how do I improve the game or the content that I'm making for the person that is paying me to make this, right? And you don't respond with a very immature quote saying, haters gonna hate, or you try to make fun of your fans, or anything like that. It's a really bad move for a business. You don't do that. You don't make fun of your target audience. This is a Saints Row game. The original fans will come and leave their advice on this. Some will be positive, some will be negative, and it's important as a game company that you take that criticism and try to improve the content that you're making. Because if you just kind of act, even if people are acting immature, if you act immature back, then that really creates a bad reputation for your company, and it really disappoints players, and it just makes a company look insane. It makes them look like they're children, and it's not how a company should carry themselves. So that's probably the worst thing of all. The game is okay. That's one thing. If they really want to take this in this direction, it's disappointing. But if you're gonna backlash at the people who are criticizing this, then that's a really bad path to go down. Don't do it. Don't do that. It's quite disappointing. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up here. This is long enough. I've done so many takes of this. It's ridiculous. So I just wanted to voice my opinion. Thanks for watching, guys. Give me a like or not. I don't know. Whatever. See you guys later.